Welcome everyone to the fifth round of the Tata Steel Chess Masters 2025. On your screen is Gukesh Domaraju here, who enters in and has many fans there waiting to see him in action. He is going to play against Nguyen Thai Dai 1 here, and we have Andre Schulz there from ChessBase who comes in and takes a picture of Gukesh, shakes hands with him. The world champion has had 4 draws in a row. He was close to winning his first game against Javokhir Sindarov, then drew against Jordan Van Forest, and then 2 draws against Arjun and Prag. And now he faces Thaiday who is the last seed of the tournament, but is playing nowhere close to that. He is playing excellent chess, has 3 draws in this tournament, first 3 rounds, and there he enters in. He's the winner of last year's Challengers tournament from Czech Republic, 2-6, 5-6 ELO. 3 draws against Jordan, Arjun, and Prague, and he lost to Nodirbek Abdusattarov. So he is on 1.5 out of 4 here, and Gukesh will be trying his level best to get his first win of the tournament. You can see Gukesh just meditating, getting into the groove. It's also the round before the rest day. A handshake here, 2 hours for 40 moves, and then a 30-minute increment with 30 seconds. And this, dear friends, is the ambit recap of the day. Thai Taiwan opens the game with pawn to d4, and Gukesh responds back with knight coming out to f6. And we have pawn to c4 here. Gukesh generally likes to play his pawn to e6, and he does it. It's the more solid way to play. It opens up the bishop. You put your pawn in the center of the board. Makes a lot of sense here. The knight comes out to f3. And pawn to b6 played. So the bishop plans to either come to b7 or a6 to put pressure on the c4 pawn. And this is known as the Queen's Indian. Thai 1 plays his pawn to g3, which is the most typical way to put the bishop on g2, and bishop comes out on a6, pressuring the c4 pawn. Now you can play b3, you can play queen c2, you can play knight d2, many options in this position. He goes pawn to b3. The dark squares around the queen side are weakened a bit, so you generally get bishop before check, but here Gukesh goes directly to d5, and he's putting pressure on the c4 pawn. He may want to take it twice. Bishop goes to g2, and now you must notice that if pawn takes pawn, knight e5 would simply open up this bishop. So knight comes out to d7, and now white will just castle here. Once again, not so easy to win the pawn till your rook is on a8, so Gukesh gets his rook to c8. And it's interesting, he chooses that even before the bishop on f8 is developed, Knight d2, and although Thai 1 is out of his prep, he's at 1 hour 31 minutes while Gukesh is blitzing out his moves. He's at 1:58. I think this additional time in the opening is quite helpful. Bishop b2 played, and now black will just castle here. So black finishes their development. They would love to play the move c5 here, and white just playing the most natural moves, getting the pieces out. Rook on c1, rook comes to e8, and this is useful. If you take here, then the rook comes out on the open file. So he plays his rook to e1, and now bishop to b7. So the bishop drops back. We have pawn to e3 played. And now pawn to c5. It's always very interesting when these four pawns are staring off against each other, and both sides want the other side to capture, like dc or cd. But I think for white, taking here doesn't make makes a lot of sense. It's not a bad idea. But rook ed1, and I think Gukesh is also waiting for this right moment to capture. So he plays his queen to c7. A bit curious if I can take dc5. Maybe he'll take back with the pawn, keeping this file closed. He plays h4. Wow, that's a very interesting move by Van Nguyen. Bishop g3, bishop d6, looking at the g3 square. And now knight to b1. Ooh, well, he's coming with his knight to the c3 square and going to b5. Now that's a very ambitious move. And Gukesh decides to now start simplifying, because if white would get knight c3, he would be very well set in the position. So dc4. Now taking with the rook is not a great idea because of bishop a6 and you lose an exchange. So taking back with the pawn makes all the sense. And now pawn takes pawn. Yes, he takes, c takes d4. And now e takes d4 is good, but also knight d4 not to be underestimated. Yes, you get a very bad pawn, but knight b5 is a threat. Instead, he takes with the pawn here. There are ideas of c5 in the air, sacking a pawn, but Gukesh is very quick to strike in the center with the pawn to e5 move. And now Thai Dai 1 has a choice between to take or push. If you push, it limits this bishop, but c4 becomes weak, c5 square is for black. So he decides to capture. Pawn takes pawn here. And now knight takes on e5. Oh, he first takes on f3, queen f3, and knight e5. Attacking the queen here. So very interesting decision here to give up your bishop by Gukesh. Because here white could take on e5 and go into opposite colored bishops. But I think Van Nguyen was like, let me try a little bit more here by going queen to b7. And Gukesh gets his bishop on a very nice diagonal. He wants to put pressure on f2. He wants to get his knight to g4. And by the way, guys, look at the clock timings. 25 minutes for Thai Dai 1 and 1 hour 1 minute for Gukesh. He takes on e5. Rook e5 taken. And perhaps a very logical idea is to go for a check. Rook d8 check. And the bishop will drop back. Now the thing to notice here is that white is having a weakness on c4, but so is black on b6. Bishop to f1, putting pressure on the c4 pawn. And now g6 with the idea of king g7. Knight comes out to c3. And now king comes up to g7 to get the bishop back on this square. So once the bishop comes here and puts pressure on f2 and the knight comes in, it can become very, very interesting for black. And to add to the time pressure of Van Nguyen, this could be very, very deadly. Rook c6. I like this move. Just defending the pawn, preempting an attack on it. Rook b8 played. And Gukesh now gets his bishop to b4. Attacking the knight. The knight has to, I think, go to a4 to put even more pressure on b6. 9 minutes for Van Nguyen. He is 11 moves away from reaching move 40. Rook e6, defending b6. And he plays rook to b7 with some ideas of c5 and bishop c4. h5 played by Gukesh, which is not yet possible. c5 takes bishop c4, there's bishop f2, and you lose this. But he goes rook c1. And now knight jumps into g4. You can see Gukesh's time is also down to 6 minutes on the clock. He took a massive 13 minutes for his last move. Bishop g2, attacking the rook. Rook comes to d6, very natural move. And your rook is attacked, you move it. But look at this move. Bishop e1 comes out of the blue. With just 3 minutes 50 seconds on the clock, he chops the rook. Bishop f2 check. And all of a sudden, things have become wild now. Take rook c6, king g2, and now black has one pawn and a piece for a rook, but many different threats, and he makes a mistake, a huge mistake. He should have played rook e7 here, controlling a key square, but rook c3 now allows bishop d4, which is not an easy move, but it allows then knight e3 check. The rook is hardly having a square. For example, bishop d4, rook c1, you already have rook f6, rook f2. This rook f1 move is met with knight e3 check. So it's amazing, and Gukesh finds it. Bishop d4 on the board. Amazing play here. And with 1 minute on the clock, he goes rook f3 because he wanted to stop rook f6. And he's also attacking this move. f7, knight e5 played by Gukesh, defending as well as attacking. Rook comes to f4. And now rook takes c4 played. And Gukesh looks at the screen there on the side to know which move number it is. Rook takes c4 and knight takes b6. He gives a check instantly. There was also another move, rook b4, which could have won a piece. But king f1. And now move number 39. The best move now is bishop e3. And look at Gukesh there. Pure drama. It's pure drama for everything that's happening here. And now bishop e3. He attacks the rook. Look at this. The rook has no squares on the f file. And if you move it away, there's rook f2 and knight d3 and knight f3 check coming. So a4 played. And on the 40th move, Gukesh chops off the rook. Pawn takes. He sees the move number. He decides to go to the restroom there. And Van Nguyen, he knows that under the time pressure, things went terribly wrong. And that Gukesh is in control here. And Gukesh, of course, didn't write his last few moves because when you hit move 40, you want to, you can, I mean, when you have 5 minutes left on the clock, you can stop writing. So Gukesh now takes his opponent's score sheet and writes it down. And that's fine, that's allowed if it's your time that's ticking down. You can't do that in your opponent's time. Now he goes knight to c4. He's offering a trade of knights, which is interesting because take, he realizes he's going to win another pawn. So knight goes to d5. And Gukesh is very smart. He knows that knight d6, knight f5 is a great home for the knight. Rook, knight to c7. And king comes up to f6. He goes rook to b5, attacks the pawn on a5 and rook a2. Oh, there's no way you can defend this pawn here. Check. Maybe Thai Dai 1 is coming to c3. King goes back to g7. And now f5. Well, trying to get some counterplay with fg6. So Gukesh chops off the pawn. He's like, okay, that's a free pawn. I'm happy to have it. Knight f4. attacking h5, attacking f5, but knight jumps to e3, defending with one of the pawns, and the king can't come up because the rook controls it. King g1, and now you just take rook takes a4, takes here, attacks the knight and the pawn, check. King comes up to g6, and no more checks here because the rook controls. So knight comes back to g3, and you don't want to take this pawn because your a5 pawn is lost. So rook a2 once again, the best move, threatening rook g2, and the a pawn is ready to roll. King comes to h1, and pawn to a4, pushes ahead, and Van Nguyen resigns here. Gukesh scores his first win of 2026, and what a win for him. I think combining time trouble, finding this move, rook c6, then bishop e1, really put a lot of pressure on his opponent, and I think it was really difficult for Thai Dai 1 to keep everything under control. And here they are analyzing this key moment that was there. And with this, Gukesh moves to 3 points. He's half a point behind the leaders of the tournament, who are Sindarov, Nodirbek, and Hans Niemann, who all have 2 wins, while Gukesh has 1 win and 4 draws. It's going to be a very exciting finish in this tournament. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the game. We also have a short excerpt from the interview of Gukesh along with Fiona, and we have the arbiter here who says that maybe you guys can go out and analyze.
Did you get more or less what you wanted today out of the opener?
I got a position with a lot of pieces, and probably at some point he could have just played knight e5 and white should be like very slightly better. But yeah, it was anyways unclear, and I think this was the moment where I started taking over because I got the break, and I mean with the Isolani, it's always nice to play. It should not be.
Should be holdable,
Should
right?
be holdable, but I thought that's very pleasant for me.
Did you feel, especially with this time control, that it's maybe harder to hold?
Not about the time control, but I think he was he's already like had 20 minutes for 15 moves, which is kind of tricky in such an unpleasant position. So I had pretty high hopes, and I think he defended well. He's finding all the moves that made my task difficult. But I think I was very happy with this rook c6 because bishop c5 I would run into knight a4, and I didn't really want to exchange the bishop for the knight. And I think rook b8 again was clever. I think the only trick that I could see in this position was bishop e1, and especially in his time trouble, it was very hard to deal with all the checks around his king. I don't know if this position is holdable, but like practically, I would say it's.
I think the engines say it's holdable, but yeah, I also thought in a practical game, I don't see a human holding.
Yeah, and especially with like 1 minute on the clock, yeah. So, and then I.
Did you immediately rook c3 was flagged as a blunder, probably the final blunder? Did you see that this was a big mistake?
Yeah, actually, before I played bishop e1, I calculated rook c3, and I actually could have won easier. I mean, when I played bishop e1, I thought rook c2 was just winning because I had seen that king f1, bishop e3 is over. But I had missed king h1. After the game, we both were trying very hard to like find what is the win here, but still not sure because bishop e3, rook f1.
If you want to check, we can very quickly toggle on the analysis.
How do I do that?
Just
this one. King h6. Yeah, probably I have to like slowly win it. Rook c1, king g2, rook g1. Yeah. Okay, bishop e3, and he does not have square for the rook. Okay, that is clever, but yeah, I would anyways like slowly have won it. And yeah, after he missed bishop e3, it was
Game
pretty
over.
smooth. Yeah.